That's right. You know who it is. It's your boy, AG the Dad, Mr. Shit Talker himself. Today is Monday, October 3rd. I want to give a quick shout out to my daughter. Her birthday was yesterday, and just want to let you know I love you, daughter. This is Shit Talking with Sensible Chery, and man, we're gonna always do what we do. Jump right in because time is limited, and I know y'all want to hear what we got to say. So, good morning, Shit Talking Chery.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. What's the good word today?
Well, let's see. We're always pretty Oregon based. Every now and then we broaden our horizons a bit, but so actually this one probably is a little broader. Our governor just decided to give $3 million in federal funds for school safety and prevention, which is supposed to go towards hiring people to be able to establish programs to prevent violence and bullying and making our schools safe, which I think is a great thing. Um, I always am curious when it comes to federal funds that we receive, though, if there's any strings attached, because I know
Mhm.
that with the COVID, and I believe these are still part of the COVID relief funds.
Okay.
Um, and so there were strings that were attached that we chose to put on as a state when we received some of the funds way back during the height of the pandemic, which was partly requiring our students to wear masks. And so that was one of the things that came up for Oregon is that um, I do not believe it was an actual requirement to receive the funds from the federal side, but it was something that a lot of some states layered in to their they had to write what they were going to do in order to get the funds. And
Mm.
so I know for Oregon, that was something that I had run into is that we had actually put in there that we would mask our children as part of receiving those funds. And that's one of the things that a lot of people were getting concerned about and starting to attack school boards on and stuff like that, saying that, it was the school board's decisions to keep masks on our kids for those that wanted a little bit more flexibility with that option. And that is not the case. That was state directed. And so now, as we're getting into the, school shootings and stuff like that have happened recently, this is one of the things where, they immediately go to, if this is a gun control issue, which I mean, safety is safety to me. And, I am definitely not one that is along the lines of uh, people are behind the guns that kill people. Guns by themselves do not kill people. And so there's a lot root cause to that. So when it comes to safety in our schools, let's talk about that. How safe should our schools be? I know we have people that there's some places that have like community resource officers. There's some areas where they've pulled them out. So, what's the thought between having a presence in the school to protect our children versus not? Is it something that actually helps um, to prevent certain things from happening? Or is it something that gives that atmosphere of like being in a lockdown or something, or is intimidating having somebody in the school? What are
You
your thoughts? Let's talk about
what's so crazy is back when we were growing up and going to school, there were no fences,
it.
there was open lunch. Um, so for people that don't understand what open lunch means, that's during lunch, you could leave campus, go to McDonald's, get you something to eat, and come back. As long as you were back in time to go to class, it wasn't a big deal. So we didn't have the problems that we had maybe towards the very end of my high school life. We started to have maybe here and there random students from other campuses coming up having altercations. from what had happened at your local kid dance hall or park or whatever, and it just kind of still kept going. But we weren't having people go into schools and killing people and stuff like that. And I think it has a lot to do with the laws that were wrote in the past to hamper parents. I, I strongly believe that the fact that they have made so many laws that have made parents scared to discipline their children that now children have been emboldened that they can talk however they want. They
Act
can
a fool.
act a fool. And the one thing that I want to, I'm not sure if it was the FCC or I'm not sure which um, uh, organization or company that was in charge of rating what's suitable for children, when you have these games, but that rating has went out the door. I mean it is um kind of stupid because a parent is going to get it for the kid anyway, or if they're going to get it, and if a kid really wants it, they'll have a friend who has a friend get it for them. So there's always a way to get a game. But when games are created like that, then you still have to give the fault to the parent to not let kids get on games that are going to go out there. Like uh, I'll point one out: Grand Theft Auto. It's such a popular
Mhm.
game, but it's conditioning our children to be in the mindset that, especially when you're playing it every single day, all day, and your body starts to think like the criminal mindset that they're teaching you to be. So you're already setting your kids up for failure by putting them on to a game like that. So now they're
Yep.
thinking, let's kill them all.
I know that's an interesting one because my son, he's been, I mean, he plays Fortnite. He's even played Call of Duty. But I have definite. He's like, Mom, can I please get Grand? I'm like, not that one, buddy, not that one. And I know that there's a lot, even in like Call of Duty. There's a lot. And I don't know that goes. There's so many areas of gray in this, or what we can't. So much of it isn't just black or white. Because like with my son, I am highly involved with him. He's definitely getting at an interesting age. Um, but he's always been a pretty good kid.
Mhm.
Um, but like with my daughter, I've had situations with my daughter, she's still deep in addiction. And that started with her. It was probably 10 when the trouble started, but there was a lot of transitioning going on. That's when I moved out to Oregon. And so, but she got deep in when she was 13. So like this 10 to 13, and I know there's definitely a difference between girls and boys and stuff like that, but 7 was the age with my son where I started noticing that he had um, opinions about things, about getting in trouble. Normally it was like he'd love mom, you get in trouble, and I still love you, mommy. And it was like 7. I remember he got in trouble for something, and that was the first time he walked out of the house. He was mad about it. He had an attitude. I'm like, whoa, who's that? It was like all of a sudden it wasn't just, it's like, no, I don't like this. Um, but he had gotten in trouble. And so it's that they're coming into their own. There's so much, and it's so crucial, those early years.
Mhm.
And that's why when they're really little, it's so much when you're interacting with your child and the things that you're teaching them at a young age, when you don't think that they're paying attention.
Oh,
um,
they're definitely listening.
they are. And it's just like, and those little, and I've never been a fan of the well, not always. I'm not a super fan when they're little, like under the age of 5, like in that dynamic of go figure it out. Like it's like it's like when parents are like, go away, go figure out your own, don't tattle, that kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. I remember having the baby monitor when the kids were playing, going all the time, when they were in just out of eyesight, and listening to them,
Mhm.
because their idea of problem resolution at those ages, they haven't figured it out.
Right.
So, Johnny pushes Susie off out of the tree, and you're like, oh, no. And then, Susie's like, Mom, and you're like, oh, go figure it out. Well, Susie probably going to retaliate a little bit, instead of
Right.
getting on Johnny about pushing Susie out of the tree. Like, they are not ready to make those decisions. Unfortunately, every kid that hangs out at my house, Auntie Sherry's house, they get lectured. Like, we go through the whole thing. Like, okay, how did we get from everybody getting along to somebody's bawling their eyes out? And when you back it up and back it up, the perpetrator usually appears innocent
Mhm.
at the end. But when you start, it's like, there's so many layers that this could have gone differently. It's just
Mhm.
like, and we need to be there to help them sort that out.
Right.
We need to show them that, you're not always going to get your way. This idea of everybody wanting to do what they want to do and then someone being left out, or, taking turns. I had some kids over this weekend and it was fun. It's just like, just to watch them try to problem solve. And they're all, between the ages of 7 and 10, and they had their little arguments and they were able to figure it out. I only had to intervene a couple times where I'm like, yeah, no, you guys need to figure something else out. But we put our kids in these classrooms all day and we expect them to just sit there. These kids were crazy. I mean, they were everywhere. We went from building forts to some little airball to, you know, playing, coloring, video. Like, they were trampoline. They were doing it all, and they were loud, and they needed to run out that energy. And so, in this day and age where we're having these kids and we expect them to be in classrooms and just sit there and listen and not be able to critically think on their own, problem solve on their own. It's just like we need to do better. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to these games and things, each child is individual. And so my son, he's pretty level headed. And so I do have a little bit more tolerance for him right now to play some games that, they have the different ratings on what they should be. And then it's like you have the parents like, well, you should never let your child, play anything that isn't, rated for their age appropriateness. But there's a different maturity level for different people. If my kid was out, poking at animals or mistreating animals or picking on kids and other things, I wouldn't want to. It would be almost, what's the word, instigating him, or somehow to do that if he's playing these games. But that's
Mhm.
like, he's like, this is just a game. Like, I know I'm not supposed to do this when I'm not in the game, if it's speeding away from police or something. And it's just like, I haven't ever given him the idea of, you need to fear the police or something like that. um but there's definitely situations like you need to know how to handle yourself, and don't act certain ways. And
Y- there's an upside to that, right? The Grand Theft Auto. Granted, you might have a kid that's pro police, and he plays the game and goes and hunts down all the bad guys. So you never know. But let me tell you, when I said they are paying attention, one day my kid, he was playing one of his games, and he said, "What the hell? Come on!" And I said, "Hey, watch your mouth." And he said, "Oh, sorry." And I said, "Now, what makes you think it's okay for you to cuss?" And he said, and it caught me off guard. I'm trying to be, what makes you think you could cuss? And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I hear you and mom using that language all the time, so I thought it was okay. It was just
Mhm.
normal, everyday talk." And I said, it caught me off guard because I was like, I wasn't expecting that answer. So I said, that is a good. I had to be honest.
Right.
That's a damn good answer. Um,
Right.
but no, you cannot use that language. Uh, I'm older, I'm mature, I'm an adult, and that's adult language. And children cannot use that because it's disrespectful, especially to in front of adults. And he just kind of
Mhm.
looked at me like, okay, well, sorry, you know.
Well,
but they are paying attention.
they are. Well, and that's an excellent point. It's so funny because I remember when I was on the East Coast, I used to cuss like a sailor or a trucker or whatever. And then when I came out here and I had, before my husband, I had went into a blended family. And it was just weird. And, it was before, it was around the time that I had gotten saved and stuff like that. And so I just went through this period of not wanting to cuss. And so I stopped for years. I just didn't. We had 3 kids in the house and that kind of thing. And I'm like, it's just like, and different families. And so I stopped, and then I don't remember. It was after, probably towards the end of that relationship, after that relationship, and then it would come out, and I'm like, "Oh, that's weird." Like, it just felt weird. Now I still don't cuss a lot, but I do when the time is right. And then, of course, whatever's in my car, that's a whole nother one of my music. So I always
Right.
tell my son, I'm like, what is the word, that musical, like, you get a pass
You get a
when
pass.
it's in the music.
Right.
Um, but I'm like, you don't repeat that with adults and stuff like that. And, his father's the same way. I mean, it's different, you know what I mean, when you're with your friends. But at the same time, I have a lot of friends, they have no filter, zero filter.
Oh yeah,
And
we all have
and
that.
I've had enough discussions with him where I'm like, it's like, just because you hear it, and I'm like, and those, different adults, I'm like, it doesn't mean that you need to repeat it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna think like he's never gonna cuss in his life. And I'm sure once he starts going hunting with dad, whatever hunting camping etiquette is with dad and the boys, and when he's trying, gonna be a man,
Right.
who knows what conversations will be had. But um it's just a matter, they listen to everything, and they are mirroring us. And so why, we are sending conflicting messages when we do that. And I mean, it's just like, we are all individuals. Some people
Mhm.
express, I mean, you express yourself however you express yourself. And you need to find who you are. um
Mhm.
and we're all going to be different.
Yeah,
um
that's why, you know, I think that, because I think we got it way off subject of what you were talking about in the beginning,
that
but it
happens.
definitely, um, the taking away from parents' rights to discipline has a snowball effect of why now the kids are coming to school doing what they're doing, and also it's some of um the the some remember, the bullies are grown up now. The bullies that we had in
The
school
what?
are grown up. The bullies, all the
Oh,
bullies that we had when we had growing up are now adults. And if they, and the ones that haven't grown up and still have that egotistical, uh, just bad attitude, it it rolls downhill. Their
yeah,
genetics is going to be affected because they're preaching it, just like the thing about hate. And whether it's pro white or pro black, if you teach your kids to hate anybody, especially a different race, then they're going to hate them as they grow up
right.
because that's all they know. But if you let them develop unhampered, you will be surprised that even in a racist, on both sides or on any side, uh, a child will grow up and build their own opinion, and in most cases will find that they will interact with everyone
Yeah. No,
because, yeah.
you are absolutely right. And that's one of the things, there's so many adults defending the rights of children in good and potentially bad ways. But what we're missing is, a lot of this is the adult and their opinions versus what the children are truly feeling. And then the other side of it is, we are putting on children what we see on the outside, and that may not be their truth. And so what I'm getting at is you have kids that, there's a lot of stuff going on with identity right now and kids getting confused. And so when you start having these children that are making adult decisions when they do not have the mental capacity or experience to have developed them on their own, they are just mirroring their environment. And so, children that are choosing to make choices that should be adult decisions are making those choices based on the pressures around them. And that can be the adults in their life, that can be the friends in their life. And so we have to be careful, and that's where we're supposed to be guiding them. But as we got off subject again, back on the corporal punishment thing, I think that's where the layer is in behavior. Is I was just looking up what the definition of corporal punishment, because they've turned the idea of a spanking into corporal punishment. Because like Missouri, I think we might have touched base on this on one other episode, where they just decided they were going to bring the paddle back to school in some Missouri, but it was a parent permission thing. If parents signed off that you're able to be disciplined with a paddle, then you're on that list. And it was like, guess which children are behaving now? But they define that as corporal punishment. And the same thing with like parents, like when you're saying when that change was, and I'd be interesting because I haven't really done enough research on that. But you're right. We took extremes, which is child abuse, and we applied that across the board. And so, like the definition of corporal punishment is, real quick, the infliction of physical pain upon a person's body as punishment for a crime or infraction. And so there's a difference between physical pain to the extent of bloody, bruised, broken, versus physical pain because you got swatted. And I want to make sure that you understand what you did was wrong. And so we start to overgeneralizing words, where we start including all degree levels of words into one word. And then it's like, oh, you can't do that. You can't spank your child because that's abuse. Well, spanking a child to get them in line, and I don't think you should just be spanking your child for every little thing, like the spilled milk or something. But when you've established something and your child is repeatedly being disobedient, then it can warrant a spanking. Some children may never need one. Some children might need a few. And that's still a parent's choice. But if you have a kid that is acting a fool and all you're doing is giving them timeouts, you're going to have to step up the consequences, because obviously that's not working. And so you have to find something that works with children. And that doesn't always mean that it's a spanking. It very well could be you taking away the most significant thing to them, which might be their gaming. I've had friends tell me that, it's like if they know their kid all about their, something special to them, like their hair or their shoes or something. Like if they're gelling their hair, take their gel away. If it's about their shoes, make them wear the the oldest shoes something that will impact them enough that they don't want to do, what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Um, you know, the corporal punishment in schools, back in the day, I could see how it could get out of hand, only because if you think about back in the early 60s when segregation was still prominent, and once they started integrating both races, the paddling may have been a little bit more severe to different races. And that's why allowing that in the school system is a real gray area.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think that because we have cameras,
Mm-hmm.
if you do corporal punishment on film, so that they know it's not taken out of context. I
Mhm.
think it may be able to work. But one of the things that I think that the kids at our school systems now have so much pressure at the fact that they have this and that to worry about. One example is if you have a bully that's bullying you and um, they jump you in school, uh, when you get to the office, you're both suspended.
Right.
And that's not right
Right.
because the person, the you're punishing the victim as well.
Yep.
And that's where I have a problem because I remember I'll use me as an example when I was in school. This guy, he sucker punched me when I was walking in the door, and we squared up. But the teacher broke us up, and um, we had to go to the office. The principal didn't really care about who started it. The only thing he cared about was who was involved and did it happen. And the fact that we both admitted, yeah, uh, we fought is all he heard. Yeah, he
Right.
hit me. I was walking in the class, he hit me, and then we squared up and fought. And I defended myself. And okay, well, you both get suspended for 3 days. Why? What did I do? I was walking in the class.
Right.
And that's where, now that we have cameras and everything, I think it's so much easier to be a lot fairer. Let me review the footage and see exactly what happened. I'm
Right.
sure that eventually kids will figure out the loophole on how to beat that because a bully will figure it out on how he won't get in trouble for what he's doing because it's part of the hunt, I guess. But they the the victims in a lot of these cases are unjustly being punished, and that could be part of the reason why the ones that are the ones that are getting bullied are the ones that are coming back shooting up schools, but they're killing everyone, not the bully. They're killing everyone because they're
Right.
so mad. Because now, kids, if you're listening, when you see somebody bullying somebody else and you think it's funny and you're laughing at them,
Mhm.
don't be mad if they come back and the person getting bullied comes back and does something crazy because you didn't help them. You are just as guilty as the bully that's beating them up. You could
Yeah.
stop it. You have the power, especially if there's a bunch of you and you're all standing
Mhm.
around watching, laughing. You're laughing at a guy clowning somebody else and hurting their feelings instead of standing up for what's right.
Yep.
And as a group standing up against a bully, all you got to do is say, "Hey, man, that ain't cool.
Yep.
That'd be cool." When has humiliating somebody been the cool thing to do? Why not uplift everybody? Why not
Right.
uplift your friends? Even your enemies. I mean, we've all said, "I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy."
Mhm.
Okay, well, why should you wish anything on your enemy? Because if he thought the same way you did, nothing would ever get accomplished because you're always wishing bad things. Why don't you wish good? And maybe they'll change their tune, their idea, their mental. Maybe they will see light in a different way. You know, that's the school shootings and stuff like that. We're never going to be able to stop that
Right.
if it wants to be done. You can't uh, change gun laws, all that. The only thing that you do by making gun laws is affect the unarmed, the law-abiding citizens, all that. Because all criminals, there's too many guns on the street now for us to worry about trying to stop uh, people from getting guns. There's
Right.
obviously kids are getting guns underage, so you're not going to stop it. It's I know they go, well, we got to start somewhere. You know what? Start by educating.
Mhm.
Stop taking away all the things for kids to do.
Right.
Bring back community centers, and if community centers are
Yeah.
the hot spots for violence, then spend the money protecting those places. And now you
Right.
have a safe place for kids to go and they can have fun, hang out, and it doesn't cost anything. Because right now, for kids to do anything costs. And the way the the financial status of a lot of people right now is a lot of people are broke, especially after
Yeah.
COVID. So kids are bored to death. And
Yeah.
now what do? They here, let me just spend my money, buy a gaming system, and now you're taken care of.
You're absolutely right. I forgot all about community center.
They
We
took
had
everything. I mean,
yeah,
all of it costs. Even in the summertime for you to go to the aquatic center and go swimming. I
mhm,
remember it was like 50 cents or something
yeah,
ridiculously cheap. And now, I mean, it's still cheap, but
right,
when you have four kids, uh, three kids, even two kids, and then your grandkids, as an older person, even still trying to make it work because we
mhm,
all are starting to have kids earlier, and that's a whole nother story, because it's kids having kids before they're even ready to be a parent. And that's a lot of the problem. Parents aren't parenting anymore,
I
and
was
and
guilty of that.
and grandparents, no disrespect, and I love my parents, but some of them, because I see some parents out there that do too much. They need to STFU and let the parents be the parents, and let them learn from trial and error. Because if they don't learn, they're going to continue making the same mistakes. You
Yeah, we
know,
we start undermining or,
yeah.
there's parents that undermine their children's parenting and that or yeah, in a multitude of ways, and that's never a good thing. I know back to when you were talking about the bullies and stuff, I know one thing, it's something that I have had discussions with my son multiple times when it comes to kids and interacting at schools, and it's just like, there's a lot of truth to hurting people hurt people. And so when you have your bullies of the world and you have people that are at a disadvantage or what have you, that are whichever end you fall on, whether you're the bully or whether you're the victim, um, there's um, there's a lot that we need to think about. And figuring out those root causes, I keep going back to that. All we have done is addressed symptoms. All we are doing is putting band-aids on them instead of getting to the root of the problem. And so
Mhm.
much of that is we do not necessarily have time to develop those relationships with each and every child. And in the school system, there's such a high turnover right now just because of the crazy of everything that happened. You can't point a finger at a particular thing as to why there's or such a reduction in the education force, and there's such a high turnover that there's so many new teachers. And then so you've lost a lot of the wisdom and experience from the teachers that have known, have been there, and those relationships and the rapport that they have built with kids. And you've got a lot of new people coming in that don't have the experience to know how to deal with the environment that we have going on in schools right now. There's a lot of different behavior.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of it's rooted at what's going on at home. And as I getting on the school board and just seeing, you have a lot more visibility of what goes on in the school when you're on a school board. And then the other thing is you realize exactly how tied your hands are being on the school board. You think that, a lot of parents will sit up there and be like, well, the school board this, the school board that. They do have authority, but at the same time, their hands are tied to what comes down the pipeline from the state. And so to sit there and think, well, you can just save the world, you may not be able to, or you can, but like there are things that I'd like to see change in the district. Chances are they're not going to happen until my son is graduated and gone. It's a very slow change. But that doesn't
I think
mean
I think that's why a lot of people really don't get involved because they look at it from the standpoint of, eh, it's not a big deal, because
right.
there's nothing I can do about it. So we'll just let the next person worry about it. When somebody eventually has to step up, take a stand, and stand up for just children's rights and don't be so selfish of worrying about just your kids. Because remember this, everybody remember this. If you don't stand up and make a change, your kids, your grandchildren
Mhm.
will be affected. So
Yep.
don't think that you standing up isn't going to make a difference. It will. It will make a difference. That's why, even in the opening credits of this, I say, stand up for your kids, speak up, or get the F out the way so we can. Because if you don't speak up for our children, even if it takes 10 years, you still have legacy to help protect.
Mhm.
And in this day and age, if you're not speaking up and putting your voice in, no matter how hard and how long it takes for your word to be heard, then it's pointless. And you're just somebody that's you're just a part of the equation of life that, fits in the background. You're not making a difference. You're
Well,
not,
and
you know,
people give up too quickly. They they're afraid to hurt feelings. They're afraid to have conflict, disagree with one another. And sometimes you just have to keep standing. If you truly believe and know that it's what you believe is in the best interest for your children and potentially other children, there's going to be people that disagree with you. And so
mhm,
it's totally, and that's why the disagreeing parties are the ones that can actually make the greatest impact, because if they can start getting together and coming to solutions that are a mutual benefit, which means that there's a little give and take on both sides, that's when we have progress. But
mhm,
this going from one extreme to the other, and our kids are the ones. I just shared one of those little, it's interesting. You've seen the little clip of, where they try to give the example of, those that are victims or oppressed versus those that have all the advantages, where it's like, if you have your mother and father in the home, take two steps forward, and you get to
right,
this thing where you start asking all the questions, and you have a distinct group of people that are way behind, and you have a distinct group of people that are way ahead, and it's like, oh, those people ahead are the ones that are privileged, and the ones that are behind are the ones that are oppressed. But I saw it done in a very different way the other day, and it really hit my heart. It was parents in the back and their kids in the front. Like, they were the ones that were at the disadvantage, but they've done everything in their power to make sure that their kids could take those extra steps ahead. And so, in this vicious cycle of, like, you are 100% right. You say this repeatedly. You always have the haves and the have-nots. There are always going to be haves and have-nots. But on these, we talk about people will talk about generational curses and stuff like that,
mhm,
where people are just never getting any further ahead. What are you doing for your future? What are you doing for your children's future? You may be living in a disadvantage somehow, but if you're making sacrifices so that your children don't have to, and they're learning from it, because that's the difference. There's so many pendulums from the victim, the oppressed, to the privileged, and that kind of thing. But then you also have the fine line of entitlement. You give your children everything, and they don't have any concept of what it takes to work hard for it, because then you go to the side of, well, I want to shield my child from all of the things that I had to deal with, which is great. But if they don't appreciate and understand the sacrifices that you're making so that they can have, and they just expect it and think that it's handed to them on a silver platter, that is
mhm.
not life.
You know, they part of the reason I think that people look at everything about how life is going, it's everything. Parents are making life too easy for their kids, and they're not, um just like you said, they're not appreciating it because you give them everything. um Chores, what are chores? We don't have Our kids don't do chores. They don't understand the concept of you have to work for this to get that. So
Well,
it
and that would be something that it would be great if our schools taught. It's like I see these things, and it's just like, they can rattle off the capitals, or they know about, whether it's photosynthesis, or, all of this useless information. That when was the last time you had to deal, like, think of the things that you were taught in school, and
Yeah.
how much of it do you actually utilize in life? And
Um, I only utilize English at the elementary school level because you just need to know how to spell and read and write. Um, Math at the elementary level. And the only reason I say elementary level, I don't know how many of you parents out there have done some of this elementary school math, but it wasn't the elementary school math that I was doing when I was growing up. So that's why I'm saying elementary school level.
so we
Um,
have a comment on the screen.
okay, let me. What we saying? A lot of people may feel too oppressed to be able to make the first step to try and make a better way. The I always fail anyway thinking. You know what? You're absolutely right. And let
Yep.
me tell you, the thing about it is nobody wants to take accountability anymore. And us as humans are selfish. I don't care how many people want to say, oh, I'm so giving. I'm so. No, we are selfish by nature because we're not willing to give up our life. Very
Mhm.
few of us are willing to give up our life. And I don't mean our breathing life, our beating heart life. I mean our life of having any material things, kind of like a monk, and going solely hard on worrying about getting your legacy secured. Meaning, are you willing to go through life kind of like what you're doing, getting on the school board, making a difference, and not stopping when your kids are out of school and staying on the school board and still making a a conscious positive difference in the system for your generations to come. If you and everybody else thought the same way and was out there to try to make sure that we make differences in our future generations, because sometimes I do think our current generation is too late to help to save. The ones that want to be saved will be, the ones that don't want to be won't, because their thinking is the way that they are. But I also
Well,
like to say that nobody is beyond change. So anybody at any time can change and become different. Because just like they say, once a player, always a player. Once a cheat, always a cheat. That is not true. When
you're
you
right.
once a person grows up and decides that they have once they figure out their why, once
Hmm.
you figure out your why, there's nothing that can stop you. I don't care
Right.
what it is on anything that you want to achieve. Once you figure out your why, it may be your why you're doing something is because I don't want my child to have the same struggles I did. So I made sure that I was on top of their education. Just like with me, I went through school, I had decent grades. I wasn't a straight A student, but I had good grades. But I pushed that on my children. I don't accept C's. You're either the best of the worst or the worst of the best if you get a C. I'm not saying that they get in trouble for it. I just encourage them to try harder. And I tell them your gaming slows down if you get a C. You get straight A's, you can't get in trouble unless you do something that you know is out of pocket. But I give a lot more leniency when you're a
Hmm.
straight A student because I know you're doing the right things to make the right choices in life. So for me, you get straight A's, you're reading, you're comprehending, you're problem solving. There's a whole bunch of things that happen in that learning curve by pressing your kids to learn and get good grades. If you don't give a shit about their grades, then you're not the, part of going to school is the problem solving, using your mind, enlightening your mind, enhancing your train of thought. That's part of how far, how much uh struggle can we put to you for you to learn and problem solve. How broad is your mind? And I think that's where and why mathematics goes up so high. That's why English gets so complex. That's why chemistry, science, physical education, there are when you play basketball during PE, that's just the coach's way to find out who's got a little bit of talent and who we report to the coach and say, hey, man, that guy over there is going to be the star so that we can push him out this way. I mean, it's an industry. We're down to our birth certificate. We've already became a commodity.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of truth to a lot of that stuff that you're saying. And that's the thing, like what Jason was saying there on that people feel too oppressed. It's a mindset. You have to change your mindset. He just said one more thing. I was a dropout and was 18 when I had my first child, but I always pressed education to all my children. I don't want them to end up working how I had to. My oldest is a nurse, another in college. The other two are still in school. And see, that right there is exactly, those that have gone through the struggles and they want their kids to be better. And I have a funny feeling, I'm just assuming, I could be wrong, Jason, but he's probably somebody who is also helping his kids to understand the struggles that he went through, not just doing it for them or pushing them ahead, but somebody who explains. It's the same thing. Like I had my daughter at 17, and I had my son at 38. And so there's a huge difference in the things that I've gone through
Mhm.
and the things that I teach him. He is getting educated in so many ways, just in life lessons, because I want him to truly understand. We shield our children from too much. If you put them in a bubble and they never understand, that is not beneficial for them. And so to change their mind, I'm trying to build his confidence. I noticed that in fifth grade, I think there was something I was reading the other day that was talking about fifth grade is that self-esteem time of life. And I've noticed he's got some things that he gets really worked up about. And it's a confidence level, and all of the things that I have struggled with, because even this podcast, it was something I wasn't quite sure, didn't feel like I was ready for. And it's like so much of it, you just have to do it. Your confidence comes from doing it. And you have to be able to confront fear. We're going to have times in life we fail, and there's some people that allow that to destroy them, or they get into a poor situation and I'm never going to get out of this. Well, you know what, if you have that mentality that you're never going to succeed, you're never going to get through this, bad things always happen to you, guess what, you're right. Because it's like you bring those things on yourself, the energy that you bring. I remember standing outside of the school district office one day, and it was like they couldn't get into the building, and the person came outside and was just like, I'm sorry, this was the height of pandemic, or it was actually towards the tail end, but they still weren't letting people in school. And there was a mother and son, older son, teenager, maybe 15ish, 16ish, and they're sitting there, and the lady's like, sorry, you can't come in, you have to make an appointment. Mom went off and was like, see this and da 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 da, and just like, and this school and that district. And I'm like, and her son, because it was obviously they were trying to get in there for something that I think that he needed to do, and not in a good way, like something. It was just the whole thing. And I'm just like, you're setting the example for your son right there, freaking out, as opposed to, all right, well, we need to make an appointment. Your
Mhm.
actions, your reactions, you cannot control anybody's actions but your own and
Mhm.
your reaction. And so, depending on if you go through life with a piss poor attitude versus the people that are happy go lucky all the time, and you think about, and the people around you, like sometimes you need to change your environment. If
Mhm.
everybody, like they say, what is it, like your five closest friends or whatever the magic number is a good indicator for where you are and what you're going to be. If you don't like the dynamic of your circle, it's time to change your circle.
It's funny, right? So you are the average of the five people around you. So this is what I want y'all to do. Think about this. Think about your five friends, and think about the half of your friends that you look at and go, damn, they're doing better than me. Okay. And think about how much better they are doing than you. And then look at the other half and look at the worst uh friends that you have that are how they're doing. I don't mean bad friends. I mean your friends that you care about, but that are doing the worst. Those are the ones, that's where you could end up, because that's how far down the scale you are close to. If when people say I am like one paycheck from being homeless, if you have that friend who is that guy who is literally, look, if he misses one income source, he's homeless. If you have any of those kind of friends, you're just as close to that. If you have friends that are doing, just a little bit better than you, that maybe can only afford two paycheck losses, then like I said, you're close like that. The higher up that chain you go, if you have friends that are millionaires, obviously have a little bit more money that they can keep them from being homeless. But that's how you can gauge how far up you're going and how far you're getting. But with that being said, don't let that fool you that, remember, more money, more
More
problems.
problems.
Because the more money you have, if you're not wise about it, the more things you go spend your money on to create the more debt, because you didn't have those bills before. People don't realize, oh, I make this money, I'm going to buy more stuff, instead of I make more money, so I'm going to save a little bit for a while, and then I'll slowly buy things that I want. Because we're so, with the speed of the internet now, we all want everything now, and especially now that Amazon. Oh, wait. Amazon Prime, where I can get it the same day. I order it this morning, it'll be here this afternoon. Now, you ain't even got to go nowhere. So the internet has sped us up. And remember this, the government has some type of internet source that's even faster, because they're not going to give us what they have access to. Remember that. Remember that. I wouldn't be
There's
surprised if they don't have. I mean, we already, think about this. We already have 3D printing. So if
mhm.
they gave us 3D printing, what does the government have? I'm pretty sure that we might have. Now this might sound
we
like a
get the
conspiracy.
we get the scraps.
No. Yeah, but we might have teleportation. Where they can zap one thing from here and move it over here. I mean, I don't think we're too far away. Military has got some stuff up there. Think about that.
Jason chimed in again. He said, "It's weird to me. My one daughter that's in college, it seems like to me about anything she does, she excels at, but she doesn't have the follow through. Like she loses interest and moves to something." I can totally personally relate to that one. It's very interesting because I've had a tendency to excel at the things that I'm at, but my attention span. And so I don't know, maybe in like what you were talking about, AG, with the instant gratification. I think we have a very difficult time with our attention spans. And so, when I first started with, it was like through the PTO, and then it was the school board, and now I just my board nominated me to kind of be like the regional person, which there's an election process, and so I don't know if that'll come through or not, but it's like now I'm like, well, now I want to go after the state. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with moving forward when you lose interest. But I think a good lesson that I'm just learning, and if you could impress this on your daughter, is to finish something that you're going to leave behind, as opposed to just letting it go. Because there's things that you're just not, it goes to your why. Like, what's your why and your purpose? You were talking about that earlier. I don't think you always know. Like, I have a better idea of my why right now than I ever did before. But if I were to say, do I absolutely know what my why is? I can't explain it specifically. I just know I have passion for our kids, and stuff like that. And so I think some people get hung up too much on like a specific detailed why. Like you just have to know that there's something that you want to improve. But and it's good to keep doing that. And I think one of the things that I've learned is through all the experiences that I've had is it's everything that I've touched base in. I've got my hands in a lot of pots right now, and it is crazy that I feel like I'm all scattered. But at the same time, I realize that every one of those interests that I have, they are interconnecting. And that is something that is unique. And so now I'm realizing if I keep wanting to go further ahead, the best thing I can do is totally close the door of something, letting something go. Um, and so it's just trying to figure out where that is. Let's see what we've got here. She had like 400,000 TikTok viewers and then just dropped it. She monetized her channel, then dropped it. She just lost her passion about it. Uh, it's very interesting. That 400,000 TikTok, there's a lot of pressure. You talk about like AG was saying earlier, that idea of who your circle is and or your influence, the higher you get, there's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more you start getting attacked more. People have opinions, and so that's a lot.
Mhm.
When you like even for like the podcast or something, to go back, if you start looking at comments and stuff like that, that can really kind of eat at you. And so you have to be careful, and you have to be able to draw that line of not taking things personal, and being able to separate and have your self-care. Because I know I've gone too much and too far and had to dial it back. And so that ability to figure out where you need to be, and being sometimes it's okay to let go of and walk away from things. It may be for your best interest, as opposed to being like unfinished. Some things you just have to walk away from. Other things you should try to finish something or set them up for the next person if that's the case. But we're about running out of time, and I'm glad that we had some interaction on this one.
Yep, yep, yep.
This was fun. You got any last words?
You know, when people when I said the why, once you figure out your why, just like you said, everything is going to fall into place. When I started the Shit Talking Sundays podcast, my why was I just wanted to affect one person per podcast and change their way of thinking, to help them think outside the box and to be able to think a little deeper. And my very first podcast was, like I said, the day after my father passed away, because this whole podcast was supposed to start with my father. We were going to talk about his Vietnam War stories, but he passed away the day we were going to start the podcast. So the next day, that night, I reached out to my pastor, and the next day, my pastor came over. We talked. He, consoled me about the loss of life, and we ran a pod. We shot the show, and that podcast, when I went to my father's to go bury my father, I was talking to this other preacher, this other pastor that was out there, and his wife said that she had an issue with her father. And after watching my podcast, she rekindled her relationship with her father. And for me, just being able to make that change was enough for me to say, I'm going to keep going. And everything that I do, every show. So if you're not tuning in to all the different shows that I do, it's all for the purpose of enlightening somebody's life to change. If you have a show idea, please reach out to us. AG the Dad at shittalkingsundays.com. Email me. I will be more than happy to at least talk about an idea. Sensible Chery is full of common sense. We definitely like to think about things from a positive perspective. So anybody out there that you know is going through some stuff, know some kids that are going through some stuff, know some parents that are going through some stuff, turn them on to us. You know, they may be able to ask us some questions that we might be able to give them another way of thinking. All right. Sensible Chery, it's always a pleasure every Monday at 9 o'clock to have you on our show. Your show, as far as I'm concerned, because without you, there is no us. And I'm going to thank you for being selfless and going out there and fighting for our children, because if no one else does it, we will. Everybody out there, I'm AG the dad. That nice lady right there is Sensible Chery. We will see y'all next week. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button, because we will have something to say. All right. Peace out, everybody. Nothing but love for you, and be blessed. Late.
Sunday morning drama is calling up my mama. Drama.